because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are, and we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a show in which we discuss philosophical themes in popular films. My name is Justin.
And I'm Laura.
And today we're talking about a much requested film. And by that, I mean there were 2 people on Twitter who requested it. So that's big for us. And one that just keeps getting better and better every time I rewatch it. It's Christopher Nolan's space epic, Interstellar. And we're absolutely delighted to be joined today by comedian and actor and travel host and podcaster. He's 1/3 of the Action Boys, 1/2 of the hilarious travel show 100 Places to Party Before You Die, and 100% of the podcast High and Mighty. And in case you still don't know who I'm talking about, it's Jon Gabrus. Welcome, Jon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What Justin didn't say in the intro is that one of those requests for Interstellar is from your current guest, I think.
Hell yes. Oh my God. I love this movie so much. And it hit me this time. We're going to get into this, but it hit me this time. Every time I watch this movie, it goes up. I like get more into it every time I watch it. So I'm very excited to talk to you about it. Jon, when was the first time you saw the film, and how have your feelings about it grown or changed since then?
Funny, I feel like I'm in the same boat as you on this, because I first saw it when it first came out. I saw it. I actually remember it specifically because it was a really big moment for me for some reason. And bear with me, and listeners of Cows in the Field who enjoy these philosophical discussions, don't worry, I'm going to bring us down into the fucking dirt, the basement, with my level of intellect about movies. But I saw it in like 2014 is when it came out. I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it at the ArcLight alone when they were playing it in 70 millimeter. I had just gotten back from like a tour, so it was like a Monday or Tuesday after it had come out. I couldn't find a friend to go with me. I mistimed my edibles and had to take an Uber to the movies, and like I had a business call on the way. I remember all this because I was my manager, and he's like, "Are you all right? Where are you headed?" I'm like, "I'm going to the movies." He's like, "It sounds like you're," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm in an Uber." He's like, "Why are you Ubering to the movies?" And I was like, "I'm too high to drive." And he's like, "Okay, great." I sat by myself. I was like one of like 5 dudes in the theater, and was sitting pretty much center seat at the ArcLight in the big dome theater. Sat there, and the movie turned on, and I'm a Nolan head to begin with. I'm a huge like sci-fi, space exploration, the hippie kind of elements that come into that. Like Contact is one of my other favorite sci-fi movies. And then I'm just sitting there, and I just started fucking like I'm crying. Everything is hitting me like crazy. The parking, the parallel parking scene that he has to do is like that. I was just like my teeth hurt after that. I was squeezing down so hard. I had such an insane reaction. In the Uber ride home, I call my best friend and writing partner. I'm like, "Dude, I'm a change." He's like, he knew I was seeing it after the weekend. He's like, "What'd you think of Interstellar?" I just called him. I was like, "Dude, I'm a changed person now after that. That movie changed me." And he was like,
wow.
Lightly challenges me with how. And I was like, honestly, I can't articulate. I have no idea. But I did. I felt fundamentally different when I left the theater after seeing Interstellar. And people throw around the term like transcendent experience or whatever.
Yeah.
Something happened to me, and I kind of left, and I fully didn't even get it. You know what I mean? I've now seen the movie, like watched it again last night for like maybe the 8th or 9th time, and I get it more and more each time and enjoy it more and more each time. But the first time it hit me like it knocked me unconscious. It was like a shot right on the bridge of the nose. I was
Jon,
like,
can I ask you, following up on that, have you figured out since then how it changed you?
Yeah, I guess. I think kind of my experience was that kind of re-engaged me. Fast Five in the movie theater was the first time I was like back in the theater way back in the day whenever that came out, and I was like, oh, movies are just fun. sometimes. And then when I saw Interstellar by myself, I was like, oh my God, movies can say so much with so little. And it like and I couldn't get over it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And, you know, as if you have any like cartoon confidence or cockiness about yourself and you don't feel like you're doing what your level of genius actually, like I felt like that watching Cooper in the movie the first time. I was like, yeah, let him fly the fucking plane. That's what he was born to do, man. Like I got like that shit like worked on me in such a way. And I came out of that more of a fan of movies, but even more of a fan of like science shit. Like I was like,
yes.
And I'm the guy that's like, science will actually save the world, like meaning IRL. So watching this movie where it happens on a sort of like not like quote unquote grounded way, it just affected me in such a way. I was like, and Justin and I, we've DM'd about our love of like super capable human beings, and it's like people not super, but people are very good at their jobs, doing well, and watching scientists work together with different specialties to like save the world. Just
working that chalk. Let me tell you, John, it's not as sexy as that, but in real life, but it does feel good when you get that eureka moment, like when she goes and throws the papers, right? That's like, I've not had a eureka moment like that, but I've definitely like felt like I've had a eureka moment like that, and I come down and tell Laura, and then usually it's a mistake. But I know what you mean. Here's my other question, John. I think that this film, and I'm pointing at the book because the Science of Interstellar book, I think, which Kip Thorne, who was a consultant on the film, a theoretical physicist, wrote. I feel like Nolan made this film in part to inspire exactly that feeling in people, that feeling of like, oh my God, science is so important. And like to inspire that wonder that, especially this film just like makes you feel like the universe is crazy and there's so much cool stuff out there. And I suspect that he wanted to invigorate, and I would hope it would have this effect, like young people, right? Make them want to go into science. Like, so my question to you is like, do you think if you had seen this film at like 12, you would be a physicist?
Yeah, I mean, I went to school. Declared as a biology major freshman year, and changed it to radio TV film. That's how old I am. Radio TV film, like the next semester. But I wanted to originally be like a FBI agent profiler because of movies.
Nice.
And if I would have caught this one instead, I might be like, it's my dream, but I really have no stick-to-itiveness or like commitment capabilities. Like, so anything that's like, because I wanted to be a Navy SEAL when I was a kid, and I remember when I was like 14, I was like, wait a minute, you like you get roasted at gym all the time, you can't be a Navy SEAL. And then like with biology, I was like, you barely passed high school, you don't want to do that. Like I kept having those realizations, but I hope, and there's a couple of lines earlier on in the movie that I didn't pick up on until this viewing, and I think partially because first of all, when I was I'm so stoked to be on this pod. It's like one of the few podcasts that I was a listener of that I didn't know the people before. Just followed Bilga to an episode here, man. And then fell in love with you guys and stuck and listened to every movie I've seen. I've listened to. If I haven't seen it, it's on my queue to be like, when you watch that, you get to listen to the Cows in the Field pod. But you guys are so smart, and Justin, you were like, these are the questions we think we'll ask. We'll be talking about you, the DMs you sent me. And I was like, shit. It was like eye-opening just reading that. I was like, I haven't even thought about it on this team. And I'm like pitching it like it's this important movie to me. And then your questions, I'm like, holy shit, I have not even thought about it at this level. But you pointed out something about like the disdain for like technology or like wastefulness that they kind of comment on early on. Because I think on this viewing, I also realized I'm Lithgow's age.
Yeah,
like,
I think so. Yeah.
Like if it's 2067, I'd be 80 something. So that makes sense. That shit when he's like, it felt like something new was coming out every day, and it was noise and it was junk, and it's like, that's a commentary I missed the first time. And like Cooper's attitude about like, we got to be pushing the limit, like that juxtaposed with like, we got to make bucks and get someone to buy the iPhone 14.1 or whatever. Like seeing those two ideas kind of smashed together, and like where my headspace is at now with like tech in society, it's like it feels even more apt than this movie did in 2014.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that, because so the other thing that he says in that scene is you were born a generation too early or a generation too late, right? So you missed the 20th, 21st century, and then you're like the beginning of like basically the 2000s, which was like the glory time he's talking about. But you also, maybe if we survive this, we'll have another glory day in like space, so you're gonna miss that too. So you're kind of this like, so he's this, but it turns out he's the bridge character, right? He's the person who bridges these two generations. But the other thing, so to talk about technology, let's get into this, because it's totally on my mind too. We've got Elon Musk, like, and Bill Gates and Bezos and Ballmer and all these tech guys and whoever else, right? Who effectively dictate, like, you know, all the talking points of, I mean, you live in California, so I'm sure it's just even worse in California than it is on the East Coast. I think on the East Coast, you're a little bit more insulated from it. But in Silicon Valley in particular, it's just like these people are like the gods who walk among men. And as they've shown again and again, you know, I don't want to criticize our overlords, but they're pretty vapid, and they don't really think that deeply about issues that are outside of the technology that they're creating. I mean, just as evidenced, look at Elon Musk's running of Twitter, which has just run into failure after failure of, you know, his content moderation stuff, which turned out to be a nonsense. Twitter Blue, everything that he does is like everyone on Twitter warned him against it, and it doesn't work. And anyway, and I kept thinking about the theme of this film that is like love. And like love is the only thing that transcends space and time.
Only thing we're capable of perceiving.
Okay,
that
right.
that
Sorry.
transcends
Capable
space
of perceiving.
and time.
Yeah. Okay. And okay.
Thank you, Dr. Brand.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
Well, that's the thing
It's
is,
so
I
good.
remember
Yeah.
when that quote hit on the trailer, I was like, okay, really? Is this like where this movie's gonna go? And
I know, it's so cheesy and it's so good.
so cheesy. And I remember being like, I love this film, but I have reservations. And that was one of my reservations. Is I always thought this part of the film is way too corny. And it's especially towards the end when Cooper's like, love, Tars, don't you get it? Like talking to his robot friend about love. And, you know, I just felt like this is really sort of
That
stupid
line
and
specifically,
overblown.
love Tars, don't you get it? Is when you're reminded that Cooper is played by Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Right? Like it just peels one layer off from like
Yes.
this super intense gray steel movie, and you're like, he might as well be like, all right, we solved
He's
it.
got his
You know,
cowboy
like,
hat on as he's floating around in the Tesseract.
it just peaks like a little bit, like, oh, I think the character slipped there a little, man.
Yeah. And I think like so. But this watch, it really hit me. I think actually there's two things happening in this film. One is science. It's super important. People need to learn about science, right? That's why climate change is this, you know, horrific thing, and we need to educate ourselves about it. This is a film about like the perils of climate change. But also, it's a film about like science and technology guided by nothing but like you know, the
Capitalism,
capitalism,
consumerism.
innovation, without any purpose, without any like humanity or love behind it, is blind and it just leads to ruin. And I think so in the end, Cooper has to reconcile those two things. He's like got this ultra rational side where he's like, love, that means nothing. You know, what's the utility of, you know, social utility of love? But then he has to reconcile that with like, yeah, his love of Murph, which is the thing that ultimately saves the day. And so these two things come reconciled, and like that, I think, is the ultimate point for Nolan, is like, it's not just the science and it's also not just the love. It's sort of the marriage of the two. Anyway, I think that's like, anyway, that got me this time.
I agree. The love shit I caught on to early, and I did think it was cheesy at first, but I also on this viewing was like, Cooper loves science, and his love of science is what's making him follow the drone, which is making him pay attention to the scientific facts of the gravitational anomaly in Murphy's room. It's what he's pushing Murphy towards. His love of science, his love of knowledge, of learning new things and seeing new things is like such a driving like the world doesn't get saved if he doesn't have that built into him. His love
That's
of
right.
Murph is as important, or, you know, obviously more important in real life, but like he doesn't get there going unless, like, even the line he says about the drone when he's like, this thing is just snooping around, this could be used to power fucking and it feels just like, oh, you bought Twitter for $44 billion? Like, that's what you spent your money on? It's like, I felt like when my wife comes home with Trader Joe's with exclusively frozen snacks, you're like, no, that was what a misuse of our cash. It's like different scales. But something you said, these guys we're referring to, these like quote unquote our scientific geniuses, it's like PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, Twitter. None of those are a love of his. None of those are a passion project of like maybe SpaceX, or you could like of course that's everyone's passion project to get to outer space. Like fine. But everything else seems like ploys to get power or money. And or both. They're kind of interchangeable. But it feels like there's nobody out there who's just like, I should do blank. Like I'm like all these billionaires that everyone's like, I'm a philanthropist, I love this stuff. It's like, well then fucking put your money where your mouth is and do that. And every investment needs to have like a quick turnaround now because it's all shareholder shit. It's no one's ever like, well, if we do actually invest money in this could be the thing that helps us solve climate change, space travel, whatever shit we're about to be dealing with and are currently dealing with. Like that shit you hear about when you're a kid and you're like, during the space race, they needed a pen that could write in zero gravity, and that's when pencils were invented or whatever, and you're like, oh, like that's the shit that like fucking activates young nerd Gabrus, and now as a
for sure.
And like seeing that on display in this movie, I think is another part of it, like pushing to like, oh yeah, we built this space station, and instead of renting it out to the 20 richest people in America or whatever, we're gonna actually use it to like try to save humanity.
We're gonna try to save everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing I like about it is there's the other love I think of Cooper is exploration, and he says the word explore 3 times at least. So he says, we used to be explorers. We're actually going back to that scene where he's talking to Donald. He says we used to be explorers. And then later in the ship, when they just came out of cryo sleep, and Romilly, he's having a lot of trouble. He's got a lot of anxiety because he's thinking like, man, we're about 3 millimeters away from this thing just collapsing, and then we're in outer space, and everything out there is going to kill us. And he says,
that some of the finest solo yachtsmen in the world don't know how to swim. They don't know. If they go overboard, they're done. We're explorers, Ron. This is our boat. Here.
He wants to explore, like he wants to get away from wherever he currently is and get out there and find the unknown. And that's another aspect of science, right? The love of science is like seeking out the unknown and trying to figure it out and trying to understand it and ultimately tame it. And that's what they're trying to do. And so, wait, what was the third one? Oh yeah, the third one is when he gets to Man's planet. And one of the first questions he asks Man is, how far did you explore on this planet? Like he's just like really, he's like, I think he cares about the mission, but I think what he really wants to know is like, what'd you find? Like, I'm really interested in like what's down there on the surface of the planet. So anyway, I think he's just, it's that drive to find out and discover. And I think if I had seen this movie actually at 12, that might have been actually pretty invigorating for me, because I was so I was not a biology major, to go back to the top. And I'm actually curious, John, how you came onto biology, but did you like it in high school, but you wanted to do like FBI stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to be like in the like a special agent of some sort, and I was a smarter kid than I was physically capable. So I was like, I'll come in the science way, my idol Clarice Starling, and I was like,
I was gonna ask if you wanted to be Starling. That's awesome.
Of course, who doesn't? She got them done in town. It's a city girl. Piercings like that, I'm obsessed with that movie. Of course, who isn't? But yeah, so I got really into science, and I really enjoyed science in high school, and I really enjoyed learning new things and like making connections to things from across platforms or disciplines and stuff. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this, it's kind of like this, and I really enjoyed it. And then I guess like you go to college and it's like a liberal arts school, and you're like in intro to biology or whatever, and you're like, oh no, this is like, I'm making the wrong. I just drank for 8. I just hooked up with 3 girls in the first month of school. That is tripling my high school numbers. Why the fuck am I dealing with schoolwork?
Right.
And I was too young, too hetero to like really focus on school. So I just kind of fucking was like, but I always loved movies, and I was like, oh, I'll work. kind of wanted to work in movies, and I started getting into comedy, doing like comedy theater in college. So that kind of turned me harsh off.
I see.
But I've always had like respect. Like I've pitched like 5 different shows. Like I had a podcast called The Layman where I would meet with scientists and try to dumb what their ideas and what they were working down. Like that's like a special power of mine. I'm like, here's a dumb analogy. Tell me if that works. And the scientist is like, not exactly. I'm like, all right, let me tweak it a little more. And they're like, I guess, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, mouth breathing listeners, that's how mRNA works or whatever. That's
well, that is a skill, and that I think is the scientific spirit. Like right there is trying to understand. And I think we sometimes delude ourselves in thinking like understanding only occurs in the ivory tower or among the people the scientists who are actually doing the exploration. But I think understanding it's actually a really elusive concept. And it's often the case that you don't really understand something until you're able to go on Gabrus's podcast and tell him. You know what I mean? Like that's when you really get it. Like
being able to teach it is a different skill. As someone who studied something and now teaches something, like I taught improv for years and I got better at improv from teaching it and learning to articulate it.
Yeah.
And and also learned what you liked and like craft your own philosophy to the art or whatever. But then at some point it starts to be like, wow, if I really want to keep doing this art, I'm getting too into teaching. In my ended up being like, I had to break off from teaching it because I had learned everything I could from, and it's not like I'm teaching improv. It's not like I'm going to get a prodigy and be like, well, together we can do an awesome scene. Like, it's not like, it's not as exciting as Good Will Hunting. We're finishing each other's cool group games rather than like life-changing theories and shit.
But there is a skill to that whole thing. And I alluded earlier to this Science of Interstellar book, which was written by Kip Thorne, who's a theoretical physicist. And it's a very interesting book. I read it cover to cover. I read it when the movie first came out. I like immediately bought the book. And the thing about this book is it actually doesn't explain a lot of stuff very well. Like it truly doesn't. I was trying to figure out time dilation to understand, so we could talk about it on this podcast. And this chapter on time dilation in this does not explain it. It talks about some of the experimental evidence for it and this and that, but it does not, I left it being as confused. So then I went and watched 14 YouTube videos and I found that none of them really explained it either. And so I don't feel like I totally understand it, but I kind of understand a little bit of it, to at least satisfy myself. But that's the feeling of wanting to have your own understanding satisfied. And I think I think it's really cool and admirable that that has continued. Because I listen to High and Mighty and, oftentimes your conversations with people are you're trying to find common ground and interest with someone who is often a friend, but sometimes not. And sometimes somebody who comes from is a very different person coming from a different perspective. But there is this kind of inherent curiosity that you have, Jon. And I think, anyway, I think that is shared by Cooper. I think Cooper, that's what sort of defines him. It's his, as you put it, his love of science, but it's also his love of his daughter. But I think part of his love of science is that it's this desire for understanding, Laura, do you have, sorry.
I'm just laughing to myself because I'm realizing I'm Casey Affleck in this movie.
Yes. So that's the contrapoint is you've got Murph and Cooper who are let's go out and save the day. And then you've got Casey Affleck who's I want to grow corn.
I'm Tom, 100%. No, I mean, I'm not he's my favorite character, but if I'm being honest with myself, when you're talking about listen, when you came down, Justin, and showed me your diagram for how time dilation worked, and my kid was in the middle of screaming about a magnetile breakdown, and I'm just looking at you I do not know what you are talking about at all. And also I didn't have any curiosity about it. I just Nolan says stuff with I believe that he's got the science behind it or that he's thought it through. So when he's when you're closer to a black hole, time goes slower. I'm that sounds right, sure. And then when I watch Tenet and they're when you're inverted, air, you have to wear the special thing because air can't go through your lungs, right? I'm sure, that sounds right. Totally. I'm not going to think about that for more than half a second. Carry on.
I've told this story, but like when we
I
watched
am
Tenet for
Tom.
the first time, we ended the movie. I think Laura had that exact reaction. Like that was fun, and I was
had
like,
so much fun, but I did not think that hard about it.
I was like, Laura, we need to rewatch it again tomorrow, and I did this. I had like a notepad and I diagrammed out some of the scenes because I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was like I had to figure it out.
Yeah, you have fun differently than me.
Yeah. That vibe I've picked up on over the course of listening. Well, I'm curious because Nolan is such dude bait. Like, there's such film bro energy around Nolan, and like, it turns out, unfortunately, I think I might be a film bro because a lot of the guys, the directors that people all like in that crew are all some of my favorite directors. But
Because they're good.
yeah, they're talented, and like that exactly. And people are like, his movies are so cold. I'm like, I love emotional movies too, but I am fine with like a cold. Like literally, this movie has like 40 minutes of dead landscape as like imagery. Yeah. It's like on Earth, on the water planet, on Matt Damon's planet. By the way, Laura, you saying you would be Tom in this movie, played by both Timothée Chalamet and Casey Affleck.
Mm-hmm.
I would be Matt Damon. I would be like the guy who everyone's like, he's got a lot of good energy. He seems like he's got it all figured out. Oh shit, he's actually a coward scumbag. Like that would be. I would first be like, wait a minute, I'm gonna be here forever alone. Beep beep beep. Like,
beep beep. Thumbs up. Come and get me. Absolutely.
It's brutal watching a movie and being like, oh, would I be the worst guy in this movie? Yeah, probably.
At least you would have given something a try, though. I just would have been like, well, I'm gonna make my corn fritters with my steamed corn with my corn souffle, and here I am. It's great. I'm not.
Yeah, my kid's like dying of lung cancer.
I know, it's bad. It's bad not to have dreams and aspirations and to like have your head down the whole time. But that's where I'm at. And also, Justin, like, I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Ghost Story, John?
No, I haven't.
It's called Ghost Story, right?
Yeah, Ghost Story. David Lowery.
David Lowery. Anyway, the character of Casey Affleck is like a guy who never wants to like move forward at all, and his girlfriend is like, "Let's leave this house. Let's do this stuff." And he ends up dying and then just haunting the house for forever and ever and ever and ever. And we watched it like right when Justin wanted to move and I didn't want to move and I never want to make any change at all. Justin's just looking at me and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to haunt this house. Like, I'm just like,
yeah.
So I think I have like a spiritual connection with like dour Casey Affleck characters.
We will talk about this on High and Mighty, but we were just watching The Fabelmans, and in that movie, Michelle Williams is like, I was bored, so I got us a monkey. When I look at it, I laugh. And I looked at my wife, and she was like, I know, I have issues. Like, I was like, the character who's being described is so flighty, it might tear the family apart, has so much in common with my wife. And she knew it in that moment. I looked at her, and she would get a monkey because she was bored. And I was just like, without any of the fucking like consequence thought. So it's funny to see yourself represented on camera, and it's always like, yeah, and I know that's actually not ideal.
Oh no, that's me. That's it, me. Well, that's really making me feel like the frozen snack thing is the least of the worries. Then,
we got our own issues. We don't no time to unpack them here. Do you like Christopher Nolan movies, Laura? I'm curious. Like,
well, she's married to me, so
yes, I know she has to watch them.
It's been like a Stockholm syndrome thing. I think.
Yeah.
No, I think I am. I think there's some that I don't love as much as the other
ones. Do you want to get canceled? Let's do it right now.
Am I going to get canceled for saying that I think The Prestige is bad?
Yeah, so Laura doesn't like The Prestige.
Bad. I get that it's about filmmaking and craft. I once like told a dude that I didn't like The Prestige, and he's like, "But do you understand that it's about filmmaking?" I'm like, "Yes, no, I get that. Thank you."
That's so funny. Like the only thing, like, oh man, if I only got the subtext, I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would have got it.
Blown it wide open for me. Thank you.
Oh, a movie about movies.
I don't know. That's just like a personal thing. It's also because Justin knows I have like a weird thing about how I hate magic.
Yeah, Laura. Oh my God.
Well, if you hate magic, that's
I know.
That's completely reasonable. Like that is so completely reasonable. And I really like that movie. It's not in my tops of Nolan movies, but I really do enjoy that movie. But I'm just curious because I feel like over the course of his movies, he's gotten that reputation more and more. And whether he did make 3 back-to-back bleak ass Batman movies. So
Yeah.
like, yes, that's very it's very traditionally masculine energy over there. But I'm curious. Like, I feel like his movies are like, yeah, now, you know, bro city. And then when I saw Tenet, I get that it's like a lot of men in suits, like looking cool and but that movie like broke me open. Like, I saw it and was like,
Oh, man.
I thought it was fine. I didn't care about it. And then everyone was talking about it and I was like, should I rewatch this movie? And then I rewatched it at home after and was like, knowing full well how the algorithm works or whatever, I was like, oh my God, this is Pattinson has known him for so long and he's pretending like just and I was like just crying in my room and I'm like texting all my friends, I get Tenet now, and they've already moved on. Like they were kind of like, oh yeah, that's interesting.
We're never moving on. We're never moving on in this house. We love Tenet. I like Nolan, and I think Nolan gets a bad rap for his like, you know, not having good female characters, not having enough heart. I think like people just want to have that opinion about it. And if like I personally like when I hooked into Tenet was the first Debicki scene where she talks about like her relationship with Sator, how he has this hold on her with the Goya painting, with the Goya forgery. And I was just like, I'm all in on this film. Like I have an emotional hook through Cat, and I thought it was great. Like I think like I don't know. I think people have formed their opinion about Nolan like 4 films ago, and like then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The thing about Nolan is that like he keeps pulling off these magic tricks for me where I think on the whole, I'm not like, I love dude movies, like, or movies where men do their job really well. Like, you know, that's not totally my genre. I don't really like war movies for that reason, because they're not usually like a single woman. There's not a lot of emotional arc. It's a lot of like action and rat-a-tat stuff. But like Dunkirk, I was riveted from start to finish. There's no narrative. There's no emotional arcs. There's narrative, but like, you know what I mean? There's no like dialogue really between characters. There's no relationships. Barely people
They
talk.
leave you pretty
unmoored.
He leaves you pretty unmoored as an audience.
Yeah,
like it took me like 40 minutes to catch on what's going on. Yeah.
And it wasn't like the time stuff either. Like I think for Justin, the intellectual piece of that is so much a selling point, and it's a little bit less for me. But I think like I was like, by all, you know, for if you put this on paper, I should not like this movie, and I'm like completely absorbed from like minute 3 in this film. So and he does that truth like with Interstellar too. I think oftentimes I'm not always that into like into space movies. That's like a crazy thing to say because there's such a huge swath of genres within the space genre or the sci-fi genre, but it's not like one of my faves. And like this movie, I love it so much.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
I think Nolan makes blockbusters that you can rewatch and get more out of, which I don't, and I don't know what that means. Like I've overused the term sensitive bro, like for sensitive bro cinema as like expression, because I remember like a certain group of guys in my high school really liked Fight Club, but not just because it had violence in it. Like there was like 2 camps when it came out. Like a lot of people were like, dude, it's sick, Brad Pitt is fun, and like a lot of us were like, the interesting, like the duality, you know, like and it was like it. And Good Will Hunting kind of did that really early on too. I was like, you know, 14 or 13 when it came out or whatever, but I feel like some people were like, cool Boston movie, and other people were like, yeah, interesting. I'm a blue collar guy who's like super intelligent. My family doesn't give a fuck about that kind of stuff. So I find like these movies that are like on paper broy, but like give you a little something more than you would expect. It's not Captain America. You know, it's The Dark Knight. Yes, it's a fucking comic book movie, but it's saying a little more. You could watch it again and get a little bit more out of it. And then the technical filmmaking aspect is just like bananas. But like, I'm gonna see Oppenheimer. Like, he's like a first weekend guy for me for life now. Like, he just earned that credit. He can have several misses in my book, and I'm still gonna fucking stick around. He's got such a high hit rate to begin with.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I watched all of Dark Knight Rises with a raging migraine. I would not leave the theater.
Well, Laura also knew that I was like so excited for Dark Knight Rises. We get to the theater and the migraine hits, and it's a 3-hour movie with like punishing volume
and scope
she
and
didn't tell
IMAX.
me.
Yeah.
She didn't tell me until after, and then she was like, "Yeah, I felt like I was gonna throw throw up the whole time. And I was like, what? You should have just told me. We could have left.
I know, but then if I told you, then you might have like felt like you wanted to like need to take care of me or go with me. I didn't want to take it away from you. Dark Knight Rises.
I want to,
so
John. I want to ask, because what happened with me is, so I saw this film with some other friends, not with Laura, and then I was like, holy fuck, I need to see it again. And so I forced Laura to see it. Did you do that? Did you like bring Tiffany to the theater?
I forced her
like,
to watch
it?
it with me, and like, I think I do it like there's like movies like every 5 years. I just like go like, dude, you have to, and like, Tiff is a little forgetful, and like when it comes to movies, she's not clocking everything she sees the way I do, and like keeping track of that and arguing with people on podcasts about them. So like, I totally get it, but like, I'll be like every 5 years, I'll be like, you know what? Oh, fuck, you gotta watch this movie. Okay, we're watching Interstellar. I can't believe you. And she's like, yeah, no, I guess I've never seen it. And it's like, oh man, I swear I would have. Okay, let's sit down, put it on. We put it on. We're like an hour in. She's like, I've seen this a bunch of times. I remember it now. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, okay. And then like, so I'm like, I've already done this to you. That just happened recently with one of my favorite, with Manhunter, and I just love that fucking movie so much. And it was like, I did the exact same thing to Tiff. I was like, dude, man, this song is, I was like playing it in my car. She's like, this song rules. Where's this from? I'm like, dude, this is the song that the Tooth Fairy's listening to in his van before he goes in fucking Manhunter. And she's like, wait, what's Manhunter?
Is it In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida? Which song was it?
No, that's at the end. The one before he goes to kill him is like, strong as I am. Ba, ba, ba. I'll send it to you guys. I listen to it all the time.
We're ready. We're gonna do a Manhunter episode soon.
Yeah,
so.
actually, look forward to Manhunter in 22 or 23. So it's coming.
That movie fucking
yeah.
And that's in that category of movies where I'm like, oh, Tiff, I can't believe. And she's like, I've watched this. And I'm like, okay, sorry. It's like, we've been a couple for 20 years, and we definitely are going to repeat some shit. So that's the deal.
No, I think that's happened to us. I think we've definitely done that a few times. But yeah, in this case, I was like, Laura, you have to see this movie. Like, so I dragged her to the theater, and I knew when I could run to the bathroom, because it's a 3-hour movie. So I was like, okay, I can run. And I don't know if you went to the bathroom at all in that, but I don't
remember, Justin, if I peed in 2014. I'm sorry.
You were like locked in.
Justin, check your Laura bathroom journal that you keep.
Yeah, let me see. I think I logged it on Letterboxd. If she had like Laura
peed twice, it's like 4 stars. Laura peed twice. It's like, what the fuck is this review?
It should be the nuisance. I mean, listen, after baby, I pee a lot. So like, that's our new rating scale.
But
I'm 40 and I take blood pressure medication, and I'm not trying to take anything away from motherhood, but I know you're every movie that's over 2.5 hours long is a 3-way fight between Cottonmouth, having to urinate, and wanting to drink. I'm just sitting there like super stoned, but my mouth is dry, giant fucking fountain water there, but also kind of having to pee. I finished Fabelmans with like a newspaper mouth because I was like, I can't sip any more water. It's going to just be the bridge too far. So I was just like sat there like rattling and sprint during the credits to the bathroom.
God. That's dedication. I have a question now about this. Do you time the credits? Like, do you wait? Like, okay, there's gonna be 10 credits, so you go like at the 10th one.
It all depends. Like, are you talking about trailers? You mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Trailers. Excuse me.
Yeah, I usually, now that I'm an AMC, like, hey, while we're talking fucking corporations using their money for, most of the theaters in LA have become AMC theaters, for better or for worse. So I'm a Stubbs member, and so, and now all of them play 30 minutes of trailers. So I just get to the movie like 22 minutes after. We have assigned we have assigned seats too, so it's like it doesn't feel crazy. And it's like I just get there 22 and I'm tired of watching trailers. I used to be addicted to trailers. I used to watch a trailer every time it dropped. I have this big, I'm sitting at it now, this huge monitor, and I'm like, babe, you want to come in? We're going to put on the fucking blank trailer. I'm going to watch the trailer. Because, it makes sense to have the backstory that Tiffany used to work in marketing, making trailers. So like,
all right.
I love trailers for like, guess what fucking property, guess what IP's coming out? Get excited. She likes it for like that's a good version of that. So, that's whack. Like, you can't do this. And like, but over the time, trailers started just ruining my movie going experience. The first time I felt it was with the movie Nice Guys. Like, the trailer had like 3 punchlines that were ruined in the movie, and I was like, I love that movie. I would have liked it even more if I had not seen that. So now I try to avoid trailers, which is impossible with going to see a movie once or twice a week with 30 minutes of fucking trailers.
We watched the trailer for Tenet, I think, every single day since when it came out until basically until we saw it, which would have been a year after.
A year plus, yeah.
A year plus.
Dropped around Thanksgiving of 2019.
Oh, John,
and then you got to watch it December 15th, 2020.
I'll send you this, not to be released, like for general release, but I actually edited our son to the Tenet trailer. I'll send it to you. Yeah, sorry. Because he saw it a lot. I showed it to him a lot. Actually, Tenet became like his favorite movie for a moment because he watched all the like action scenes of Tenet. He would request specific parts. He'd be like, I want the scene where they do inversion. And I was like, great, cue it up. Would you want inversion 1 or inversion 2?
Ambulance Tata.
Ambulance. He'd
Ambulance
call it
Tata.
Anyway,
inversion 2.
This is not a podcast about Tenet, but let's go back to Interstellar.
Okay.
And one of the things about like them doing their jobs well, this does embody that in a way. There is a kind of like knowing what you have to do in the moment. And getting the job done that Cooper in particular embodies, but also Murphy. And in particular, like Murphy, both of them are faced with like this sort of impossible situation throughout the film. Like Murph is faced with the fact that Brandt hasn't been able to solve the gravity equation, and now they're just like, well, we're screwed. And she's like, well, we're just gonna have to solve it, right? We're gonna have to figure it out. And that's when she goes. And again, it's love that like draws her back to her room. She gets the watch and everything, which has the quantum data in it. And Cooper, periodically is, he's having to abandon his family, and now he's going off into this journey, and where he doesn't know whether he's going to come home or not. And I think it is one of those things. It's like, it's super brave, right? Like it's one of the most brave and, I don't know, compelling things to have that kind of personal sacrifice, because it's not just that he's sacrificing himself, he's sacrificing potentially his relationship with his daughter, which matters so much to him. And yet he does it anyway because he's the only one that can pilot the ship, which honestly does seem a little bit ridiculous. But I grant the movie that like he's the only one, he's the best pilot they've got. And I love it. I think it's great. And I think in the end, the final thing that he does is he drops himself into a black hole. Like, yeah, it's like completely insane.
Let's talk about that for a second, because everything you talked about, all of Coop's bravery, up to and including specifically this black hole thing, is bravery, yes. And it is in pursuit of exploration, but it's really in pursuit of protecting his family. And getting and that's what's really interesting, is that love of his family is what makes him go into the black hole, because that's the only chance that they can maybe fuck with time and get back, right? Because we learn that time can be bent, it can be wiggled, but you can't reverse its flow or whatever, is Brandt's great line. Big Anne Hathaway head over here. Happy to see her as like a fucking elite level scientist always.
I know.
She's so fucking awesome. But Cooper does a lot of his actions because they do that crazy cool ass landing on the water planet because time is of the essence on this water planet. So he does this brave ass fucking awesome pull out of the water planet. He does that later on. He does the crazy, I refer to it as like the parallel parking thing, like that docking sequence.
Yes.
Like he does all this crazy badass shit, but it's always because like, fuck, if I don't dock here, I'll never see my family again. And like, it's all about that. And in the beginning, you're kind of faulting him for that a little. Like myself trying to watch it as like I watch a lot of sci-fi movies. There's always people who disagree about, but always one of them is like low-key evil, right? Like it's always like that person's trying to undo it, or they're written as the bad guy in the like, shut it down, like that person. But like in this movie, Brandt and Cooper disagree. Like everyone disagrees, but you don't look at any one of them and go, shut the fuck, you're wrong. right? Like, and that's what's really interesting. It's like all these like super geniuses, and they're like arguing over the best way to do something, which is just so fucking cool and sort of like unrealistic to our version of society. But it's so thrilling to watch it. And every single step Cooper makes is for his family, for love. So love is strong enough to fight time and to fight these. The odds are against him in almost every, like, doesn't Tars even call it out on like the doc? It's like that, that's
He says
impossible.
it's not possible. And then Cooper says, no, it's necessary, which for someone in philosophy, in modal logic, that's actually not, that can't happen. But anyway, it's great. All the modal logicians in the audience were chuckling. It's not possible. It's necessary. They're like, no, necessary implies possible. Sorry.
It's a cool line, Jess.
For sure. It rules.
Yeah. And so like that, the reason he's able to do that, it's necessary for love, and it's possible because of love. Did love get Coop good at flying? No, but love is going to push him here, and specifically to see Murph and the kids and the family, like, and so that's just so rad that he keeps making not necessarily the bad choice, but he keeps making specific to I gotta get home choices. And Brandt is not thinking about home; she's thinking about population bomb / her lover Edmonds. Yeah. And I love that she tries to, like, I picked up on it this time, didn't really catch it all the other times. Like, her making the case for Edmonds does read as just like, it's my boyfriend, can we go please? And like, but she's pitching the argument that Coop's gonna need to make it through the rest of the film, to make it back home, to make it, to save the world or whatever. So it's really funny because you're like watching her and you're like, on this viewing, you're like, okay, even though I know love is the thing that saves everyone, but you're watching her going, you just want to see Edmonds. Okay, I get it. You want to say goodbye and then throw zygotes all over the planet and cross your fingers.
Then the growth is exponential.
She would be like, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of like just sort of trying to like untangle people's motivations and whether or not people are motivated for the right reasons. Because of course this movie comes down on like love is something that is desperately needed in order for us to save ourselves and move forward. But, in the moment where she's like, I think we should go to this planet. Data seems great. It's not about my boyfriend. And McConaughey's calling her out. Like, that's not a very scientific way to think. And of course, he's not thinking, when he prioritizes his family, when he wants to get home, he has his own love motivations. But the scene where he's talking to Donald, which is like, we keep coming back to it. It's such a good scene before he goes. And he's not articulating that he needs to go because he needs to save his kids. And maybe that's because he's also trying to protect Donald just as he's trying to protect his children, not being like, I have to go because otherwise you're all going to suffocate. But the reason he articulates is because like this is what I was made to do. And Donald is like, that's kind of fucked up he's not that harsh on it, but he is like, I think Coop says, just because I feel that way, just because I'm excited to go do this, a part of me doesn't make it wrong. And Donald says it might actually. And and that's the exact echo, I think, later when Hathaway says, just because I want to go see, this man that I loved doesn't make my instinct wrong. And McConaughey says, yeah, it does. And we're going to overrule you right now.
Oh, yeah. That's fun. I didn't even realize the match between that and the fucking Lithgow shit.
It's tough, right? Like, I think, maybe this is a good time, Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about like the parenthood angle, which we don't want to talk too much about, but like that push and pull between wanting to follow your own passions and the fact that those passions will take you away from your children.
Yeah. I mean, that's a classic Nolan theme. All right. It just comes up in like all
to be
of
fair,
his films.
It's in a lot of movies, and growing up, like I watch a lot of old movies for Action Boys, and a lot of them are like, my wife says I'm not around enough for the kids. Like I like a lot of like that shit, and that's so clearly the fucking heavily gendered male directors and writers and producers all being like, well, I am a good dad because I'm working on the case. And in this case, the case is a movie that I'm making millions of dollars on. Like, everybody just needs to, hey, I'm a good dad. Like, my father's generation is the generation of like, I put food on your plate. That's all I was required to do. And it's like, well, guess what? I'm 19, don't need food anymore. Could use some love and some direction. and you can. I never got it, but hey, thanks for 40 straight fucking spaghetti dinners or whatever, Pop. Like, and so like I feel like a lot of directors got to wrestle with that. If Nolan's off in fucking New Orleans shooting the Dark Knight trilogy for like 28 months or whatever, you're gonna be missing your kids. It's like that's fucked, right? He almost missed like the birth of his fourth kid on a movie or something like that, and that's like and that's where he got the idea.
That was Dark Knight, I think. Yeah. It was Dark Knight, and then that was like triggered like Inception and everything, like how he was gonna like pitch and because he had Inception for a long time, but he didn't have the like emotional through line. No, totally. I think like, but the other dimension of parenthood and when it comes to that push and pull, what I think is interesting is that the film says ultimately you don't want to stray too far in one direction. So it's the marriage of the two. So you have on the one hand like the desire to be with your loved ones and to help them, and then you also have the calculated plan B, right? Plan B is just like population bomb. Let's just do the make sure humanity survives. Like fuck everyone else. And that's what Man ultimately is doing, right? So Man, when he hijacks the ship, he takes it from Cooper because Cooper has decided at that point we're going home. Screw this. Brand lied. The mission is defunct, and Hathaway's like, okay, fine. Like she's convinced. Like, okay, we'll go back home. We'll just be with our families, and that's it. We'll be the last generation of humans to live. But Man has said, like, no, I knew all along this was the plan, so I'm going to keep going. So he represents, like, so I don't think of him as, like, a purely evil character because, yes, he was selfish in that he wanted to, like, stay alive, but I think he is in that moment just trying to continue plan B, the plan that was always the plan that, as he knew it. But I think Nolan positions that as, like, that's not good. It's not good to just be motivated solely by the numbers, and it's also not good to just be motivated purely by love. Like you can't be blind to the rest of the world. You have to somehow like bring them together in a way. And ultimately Cooper is able to do that. Like, he's able to sort of have it both ways. And that's like the film's resolution of that conflict is it's a little bit of like a Deus Ex Machina, but like, the Tesseract rules, so it's okay. But he is able to get them both, which is good.
I love that look on Matt Damon's face when he's like, there are others, right? When they like wake him up, it's like, you're our only hope. And he knows he lied. And he's like, there are others, right? They're like, yeah, no, we went there. No dice. You're our only hope. And you're just like,
that's good.
Watching it, having seen it, you're like, oh, because you see Damon be like, okay, well, things are going to get hairy for me. And then when McConaughey is like, I'm going back, that's even scarier because it's going to be like, now people are going to find out I was a coward too.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. He doesn't want to get found out. Yeah, that's right. Because if he just strands them on the planet, then he'll be the hero forever. And they'll just have failed.
Brutal.
Shit, I didn't realize that. He does suck. I mean, I'm trying to defend him. I always try to defend the most indefensible character, but yeah, he does suck.
Well, it's just like there's so much self-sacrifice going on in the movie to watch someone do sort of the exact opposite is pretty fun. Like it's perfect because it's completely understandable behavior from Man. Right. But in the instance of this movie, it makes him just an absolute prick. And it's funny, like just like his will to survive is just enough for us to be like, fuck that dude. You know what I mean? Like, and it's similar to fucking Coop's attitude of like, we got to make sure we get back. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that far off. It's like one shade different. It just, Coop has that, like Man has that same thing, that exploration energy and stuff, but it's the self-preservation leads all. And for Cooper, it's about, not self-survival, but survival of his family. And by design of that Earth itself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And especially about sacrifice, it kind of a lot of this movie goes by fast. And, it's worth just mentioning like Romilly, his part of his sacrifice is he has to sit on that spaceship
for 20 years,
for 23 years or something all by himself. That would be fucking terrible.
The actor, I meant to look up his name. I have it queued up right here. David Gyasi. His acting is so fucking good to sell. Yeah. I just spent 23 years in this ship talking to a robot. Like he's got like that fucking 1,000-yard fucking private pile stare, and he's kind of like his vibes are completely different. He's not creepy and like that. You know what? I take back. I wouldn't be man. I would be Romilly, because I'd be like, no, I'm good. I'll stand. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I don't need a chair. And then that's when it's like a 5-hour thing. Like that always happens to me. Oh, I'll sit in the middle and I'll sit bitch in the back. I don't care. Gabrus, you're so big. I'm like, no, that's fine. How long of a ride is? Oh, insane traffic. We're here for 3 hours. My knees hurt. Like that would be me. I'm like, oh no, I could get some work done. You're gonna be only gone for 2 years. Great. I'll bang out some shit on my laptop. I'll do some research on the black hole. And it's like, whoa, 9 years have passed. Where is everybody?
and he was the one who was the most freaked out about being in the ship. Right? He had already expressed like he had like the cabin fever already, and he was worried, and so he needed the music or whatever to calm him.
The birds.
The poor guy, man.
Yeah.
Little birdies.
You're right about the sacrifice. Everyone is sacrificing. And actually, I'm going to bring another dimension of sacrifice. So the thing that I think the theme of the film that doesn't get talked about that much in things I've read about it, but I think it's so much on the surface. And every time I watch it, I'm just like, it just is screaming out at me, is this idea of like benevolent deception. So all of the characters are constantly deceiving one another in what they think is the pursuit of the good. So lots of examples of this. Cooper doesn't tell Murph he's not coming back. Right. At one point, they're like, why didn't you tell her that, it might, the age stuff. And he's like, well, I didn't have time to explain relativity to my daughter. Right. But that's also like, he says as well, like, you have to preserve a sense of hope. I forget exactly the exact line.
You want your children to feel safe.
You want your children to feel safe. Exactly. That's that like situation of like, you're as a parent in the situation of trying to protect the innocence of your children by deceiving them. And that sucks. That's a sacrifice that you have to make, because your relationship with them might be forever
in this case
irreparably damaged. Yeah. She does forgive him, but it is like there's a long stretch of time where she feels incredible resentment towards him, like that he's just abandoned her. That is an insane thing to live with, like that, and to know that like you had to do it. I think that's a huge sacrifice. But Brand also does it. I'm talking about Professor Brand. He lies to everyone basically to get them to get on the ship and leave, because he's like, well, if I had told you the equation didn't work, you wouldn't have left. And he's right. Cooper would not have left if he didn't think there was a chance.
Now, his is obviously the hardest one to like wrap your head around. Like Dr. Brandt's like that deception is like too far for me, because it doesn't feel like it's not protecting any singular person. It's hurting more people than it's protecting in a way. Whereas like Coop lying to Murph only hurts Murph and Coop. Doesn't hurt anyone else involved with the project. Brandt like lying, like these people could have spent more time with their loved ones. Like they could have, you could have stayed home and tried to invent a mask that helps fucking combat dust or whatever. More options for these people, but I guess I just don't understand why. First of all, no other scientist is like, wait, Brandt, have you tried the time thing? Like, there's too much stuff going on there. Like that, it drives me a little fucking bananas. Where it's like, should we go check on Brand's equation? It's like, no, he says he hasn't solved it yet. And then you're like, people are taking off under the auspices of like, don't worry, we'll finish this thing while you're gone. It's like, wait, what? Why? Like, that bothered me, and I think we're supposed to be bothered by it, obviously. Yeah. Because he's not pursuing the unknown there. He's not exploring. He's not even trying to solve for what he's missing. He's just trying to get Plan B to happen, right? Like he's just pushing straight towards Plan B. And
exactly.
You got to tell your guy what his mission is. Like you got to explain. Like they got to know all the parameters. Like you can't send someone to their death without them knowing. It's like, there is no plan for you to return is a little different than, and who knows what's going to happen. Like, on this one, it burned me so extra hard for some reason. I guess because I've been so like pissed about the idea of like bosses and shit lately, and it feels like like that's just like childish. Like I feel like, and you're supposed to protect Murph. She's a child. Fucking Cooper is a grown-up, ex-military fucking rocket pilot, scientist, engineer, genius. It's like, talk to him on his fucking level, dude. Like, it's like, that's so rude. And like, ostensibly, we're supposed to understand that like at 7 years old, Murph went to that NASA station and started learning under Dr. Brandt, or like Dr. Brandt oversaw her getting a rapidly accelerated education. So he worked alongside her for 15 years, 30 years, and never was like she never picked up on it. He didn't at one point go like, I gotta fucking tell her. We could get a 20-year head start on solving this. Like, it's so fucked up, man. Like, but I get it on the deathbed scene, but when you really start to unpack it, you're like, why would you not? It's so unscience of him, I guess, is like part of my problem.
That's
too.
true. No, it's cold. It's calculated. Here's my explanation. I mean, you have to, I think, like give a certain license to the film to make it make sense. But here's the way I would pitch it. So, Brand has decided that Cooper has to fly in order for them to have any success at Plan B. That's one thing. So for some reason, he's the only one, and I can forgive that because it's like an extremely reduced population base.
Right.
So like there's not that many like good pilots. Okay. So like I'm like fine. But then two, I think Brand thinks it's possible that Cooper will be able to come back. So like he'll be able to like do the population bomb thing and then fly home. I think he does think that's possible. And I think they say they have enough fuel to do it if they don't explore all the planets. So there's like he's like thinking, all right, there's like a chance that he'll be able to make it back. And three, I think he thinks Cooper won't go if he isn't lied to, right? So he's sort of thinking like he has like if we have any
justifies
chance
the means, yeah,
exactly. If we have any chance of preserving humanity, this is it. And you know, I agree that it's wrong. I totally agree. Like partly because I don't think there's really much value in preserving humanity. Just laying it out there. So I've already talked about this on other episodes, but I don't think there's very much value to humans in general.
I like the case because like even the idea of a population, using the phrase population bomb, by the way, is definitely not unchosen. Like the idea that when we find this planet, you know, fucking Kepler 69b or whatever, and we drop a population bomb on it, slowly that fallout will just kill the planet. The fallout being exponential growth of the human race on their planet will eventually destroy their planet, just like we did to Earth. And it's like, there's something like to not to get on the side of evil genius Justin here, but like, we're gonna just decimate fucking whatever planet we put these people. Like, you know what I mean? We're just gonna get back to fucking Dust Bowl like immediately. Not immediately, but like without, if we don't try to steer it. 2,000 plus years it'll take. But it just feels, it's really, it feels like, why is it important that strangers, the bloodline of like that humans just exist? Like that feels narcissistic. And to tie it back into like the evil genius tech overlords we're talking about, like all this shit that they're all trying to like biohack their bodies to like live longer and have kids more. Every one of them has like a plethora of kids with a plethora of women, like, you know, pushing out. And it's like my genes and like there's like this weird. I'm gonna throw out the really. There's a U word there a little bit, like a little. It's a little eugenical, and it feels uncomfortable. And then like I think this population bomb extends. I would understand why NASA would come up with that plan, but who? Yeah. They're right. Who on Earth would be like, if the plan was exposed, it's like your tax dollars are going to sending jizz and eggs to another planet. You'd be like, oh, wait, what? Fuck, dude, we can have masks and food here and shit.
Yeah,
maybe like we can filter water. Like, and that's interesting because it's like even Plan B sucks.
Yeah, it totally sucks. But that is okay. Just to go back to Elon Musk. So we just talked about this. This is going to be in the next episode coming right after this. But we just talked to Roxana Haddadi about Inside Man, and we talked about the
another
philosophical
great fucking
view.
Movie.
Very good movie. Very fun. We talk about effective altruism and the philosophical view of long-termism. And the idea of long-termism is to try to create, we should try to aim to maximize like the well-being of as many human beings, including those into the distant future. And so we should be taking action now to preserve humanity as long as possible, because potentially there could be like trillions and trillions of people in our future, and we should be like trying to help them, even at the expense of helping people here and there. And that's exactly what the trade-off that has been given in this film. Plan B is just like, yeah, screw these people. Who cares? Let them die. Let's just go and keep humans going off on Alpha Centauri or wherever they head out. So yeah, and
that
but there's
long-termism shit
something-
is super stressful. I'm sure I don't want to eat too much into it, but I'm obsessed with it too. Like,
Oh yeah, you've been reading about it.
yeah, I've been reading a lot about it. The Chapo Trap House guys were just fucking going in on it because there is something.
Really?
There is something like these people want their popular, but they're good at computers. Like,
Yes.
I get it if you're trying to make like you're getting eugenical about the future, and you're like, they're not necessarily genetically intelligent or genetically superior in any, like, they don't have necessarily good genes. They currently have good jobs. That doesn't, you don't need good genes to get into a good job. And it's just like, hey, I work at this cool company, and it's like, let's just have, and it's like, well, what if the future has nothing to do with coding? Like, what if we need farmers? Like, well, cool. Your bloodline of, 12 kids having 12 kids each, having 12 kids each, having 12 kids, 12 kids each of guys who do Ruby on Rails. That doesn't fucking necessarily help society.
John, have you heard this thing? Maybe they've talked about it, but like there's I think it's some very high percentage of currently alive human beings. I think it's like 1 or 2% are descended from Genghis Khan.
Yes, I have. I recurring character on Action Boys, Charles Bronson, alleges to be a descendant of Genghis Khan as well, and he kind of looks like him in the drawings and the pictures of Genghis Khan, which is kind of chicken egg. What came first? But yeah, that shit is bananas because he just ran through Eurasia, like hit every stop hit every town around here. like young Gabrus in first semester of freshman year of college.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
right. And so Elon Musk is our current Genghis Khan, right? So he's our like overlord.
No.
That's like the ultimate display of masculinity, is to like have dominated the gene pool, I guess, in terms of the propagation of your genes. Yeah, look at Laura's face.
This is such a bummer. I'm so bummed out, y'all. Should we go back to Interstellar?
Yes, let's go back to Interstellar because fucking Elon needs love. And love is the only thing. Dude, how can we trust a guy from apartheid South Africa who's insistent on having a lot of children? It just feels too there. It feels too on the nose. It feels too like, told you guys, we warned you about this. But I really like while we're just Romilly, when Romilly and Doyle are kind of talking like, nah, there's no way to go back. Nope, can't happen. And then after Doyle died and like shit settles down, Romilly kind of walks past Cooper and goes, on the way back, who knows what could happen by the black hole? Like, it's such a huge, insane conceit, but he kind of just passes it off to Cooper. He's like, I don't know, get really close to the black hole. No one's ever done it. No one's ever drove through the middle or whatever. And he's like, okay, cool. And like, that's just such two brilliant geniuses going like, hey, crazy fucking idea. What if you drove directly into it? Like, and that's what saves the movie. It's like, it's so awesome. Yeah. It's like, hey, crazy pitch. Do the craziest fucking thing you could possibly imagine. He's like, oh yeah, I might check that out. The way they go through it with like the ships dropping off with one with TARS in it, and then like revealing that his ship is also being dropping. You're like, oh man. And it's just not just and then the wormhole travel for a stony 40-year-old is just like a dream. Just watching that with the fucking Zimmer score, which I've been blasting I had to run errands all day.
Same.
Zimmer score cranking out of the fucking sunroof here in LA. Weird looks at lights for sure. It's like I'm just there and it's like, nah.
I do think it is Zimmer's like most distinctive score. I mean, the organ stuff is incredible. And sorry,
it's so good.
What were you gonna say, Laura? Sorry.
No, I was just thinking. So this happened after they went to Miller's planet, the water planet, right? So with the kid when
talk about the black hole
Romilly
stuff.
was like, hey, should we just like jump into that black hole? He's been like practicing that really cash delivery for 20 years. Because he's like been thinking about it for a really long time. So he's like off the top of the dome, like I haven't been thinking about it for 20 years, but like, what if we jumped in a black hole?
What if you jumped in a black hole? I'm not fucking going in that black hole.
He's like, I'm gonna be listening to my birds. You go ahead and jump in there. Tell me what you get.
Imagine like the rest of the crew's family is like, oh, hi, Romilly. Is Cooper back yet? And they're like, no, sorry. He's like, okay, well, I'll try again next year. Like, it's just like Romilly's just answering the phone. Always like, thank God it's for me. Finally, I can talk to my loved one back home for a little bit.
But actually, that brings us to the when people complain about Nolan not being emotional. I mean,
that scene
when he gets all the beamed messages over 17 years or whatever, and he watches his kids grow up in like 5 minutes. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a scene quite like that. And we spoke with Tom Schoen, who wrote the Nolan Variations book, and I just have to shout out to him because he described it in that book in the most sort of beautiful way. He said it was like an emotion he had never experienced before, and it really is something really special because it's this combination of like realizing the majesty of the universe and how complex and overwhelming it is. It's kind of, which is sometimes called the sublime, the feeling of the sublime, of like being in awe of the universe, and at the same time, having this incredibly personal moment with your loved ones. And that mixture, I've never seen that before, and it's really moving. It's incredibly affecting, partly because of McConaughey's performance, but also partly because Nolan knows how to, he elevates the stakes at each, right? So McConaughey's crying when he sees his kids, Tom for the first time. Then he's crying harder when Tom's grown up. Oh, Tom has a kid. Now I'm crying even more. And then when you don't think you could get any more, sad, then Murph shows up. And
then Tom's kid dies. Then Murph shows up.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
right.
Jesse.
It's like holy shit. He just experienced a lifetime in a second, right? And that is like when
he
people talk
just
about
read the Wikipedia on his children.
of his kid's life.
Yeah, that's like a fucking wild. Like, oh shit, I accidentally read death first. Oof. Like, I just watched The Fabelmans, so it's fresh in my mind a little bit. But that movie features a lot of beautiful scenes of someone's face watching something else and conveying exactly what Michelle Williams is going through, what young Sam Fabelman's going through. Or in this case, like, this is one of the best examples I've ever seen. This and what's the George C. Scott Hardcore? That's another famous one where he sees his daughter in an adult film. But this feels like watching his face and then the fucking TV light where super in the future, advanced time dilation, fucking Domino's robots, like all this shit is happening. All this shit is happening, and then we get like the glow, like the most familiar feeling of the glow of a TV on someone's face. Like that is like nostalgic as fuck. You know how it feels to have to be in the dark with the glow of your TV. You know what that looks and then for McConaughey to fucking take us through those emotions, it's just and you're just hearing like snippets of audio, fucking magical.
Yeah.
Yes. Justin, you are 100% right. If everyone throws shit at like, hey, I'm not emotional. There's no emotion. That's just because in the 2.5-hour movie, he puts 95% of the emotions in a 1-minute sequence. Yeah. But that is a crystallized emotion. And like, you understand it all. Like it like the time we feel the consequences of we heard the fear of the time dilation. Right. Now we've like straight up experienced the consequences.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. And when people explain like all this stuff is based on Einstein, and like when Einstein would run thought experiments, they would be like, oh, you go and then two twins go and one travels close to a black hole or goes close to the speed of light and then comes back and he's really old. And isn't that funny? And that's how it's portrayed. And I think to Nolan, he's like, okay, that's amazing. I love that. That's super cool. Let's make that into something where that has emotional resonance. And I think that's so cool. Like the fact that he wants to do that, it to me is like shows he's not an emotionless filmmaker. I think the part of the reason he gets a rap on the emotionless pit is that I think he's really overly reliant on dialogue. And I think that a lot of the times his characters like are telling you what they're feeling more than they're showing it. And I think that just doesn't come across that well. And I think, that's just maybe, the kind of person he is. But this film in that moment, that is like that's like the purest, we're just experiencing it. Like he's not saying anything in that moment. I don't think he has a single line of dialogue in that 5-minute stretch or whatever. And it's just, I mean, yeah, it's incredibly moving and incredibly effective, but yet to Sean's point, it's mixed with this other weird thing, the like realization of the enormity of the universe and our smallness within it. And so there's this kind of like, oh yeah, and I'm also like, we don't understand this. Like this is so intense and so extreme that like it's like we're confronting something that's so insane that like we can barely comprehend it. So it's that mixture of like the two, and I think that is like what Nolan is so good at, for me at least, is like the emotions is there, but it's like it's connected with this other really intense feeling that you kind of only get when you like, I don't know, open a physics textbook or something and start to think about like how insane black holes are. Or like how big the universe is, right? Like when people talk about like the magnitude of the universe or the improbability of life developing because of like what the cosmological constants have to be, it's, had the narrow range of values they had to be in order for life to develop. It's like unfathomable that we would come to exist. And that, it's also sort of unfathomable, weirdly, that we would be the only ones that exist in this massive universe. So it's like really an interesting thing to contemplate, like how big everything is and how rare life is. And anyway,
if my wife is
that,
listening to this podcast right now, she just is about to have a panic attack. The second you start talking about the size of the universe, like she gets like really genuinely overwhelmed. It's really funny.
It's crazy.
She'll start being like, "It's making me nauseous. There's just so much space.
Yeah.
It's infinite. Oh, well, like, and it's so. And you're right. He just touched down on another planet. Yes, he lost like 40, 50 years of Earth time. But he is like, he just shot through a fucking wormhole that somebody put there for him, arguably he put there for himself, and is now fucking back. Like he's got everything he's ever wanted, and then he's just getting every single consequence delivered to him at the exact right after he's done.
Right.
Oh, you completed the great American work that you've been working on forever. Great. While you were busy with that, here are the fucked up things that happened to your family, your loved ones, and the earth. And you're like, no!
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. It's like Nolan's worst nightmare. I mean, in a way. Because I feel like these are such like, to me, like Nolan concerns. They're everyone's concerns, but like he's made like his entire career based off of like this issue of like family and work and all that thing.
Well, you hear parents talk about like, oh, I was at work so much, or I was on location so much that I watched my kid I watched my kid grow up on FaceTime or in videos, and that is just like the Interstellar version of that. Yeah, it's just like watching all of the fucking videos your babysitter sent you over 40 years back to back. Like it's like bananas. Like, oh, I wasn't there for any of that, but that doesn't matter because that won't exist if I don't finish my current project too. It's like
exactly.
Such a cool.
Anyway, I love it. Can I try to? Okay, sorry. Before I wanna talk about your favorite Nolans, but before we do that, can I try to explain how time dilation works? Can I?
Before we get into time dilation, because I'm very curious. Can we talk about just the robots for a second? Because they are.
Don't worry, we're gonna do some TARS. Let's do some TARS now.
Let's talk TARS. It's such a rich. Like the idea that the robot is so simple, it's advanced. Like everything about it is just good, fun sci-fi. It's like the humor factor, the lying thing, and how that comes into play, like across the like through other characters and shit like that. I really on this viewing like soaked up these two giant like fucking slabs. Like I really dug them. It's like the design of them is awesome. The voice acting is amazing. Like they make me emotional, like when they make jokes and stuff. Like, and I'm like, I'm watching a fucking black box with audio coming out of it, and I'm being so affected by it in this movie where everything is kind of weirdly sterile. But these robots bring something. And when on this viewing was the first time ever when Brandt's like, "Wait, no, you have to ask TARS to do that." It hit me so fucking hard. I was like, oh my God, right. They expect so much of these robots. And then later on, you're like, shit, that's kind of what Brandt did to fucking Cooper too. It's like I kind of told him what he had to do. I didn't let him have an option.
Yeah.
Just on this one, the tar shit just really, really got me. Like there's when he's like racing to go save her, like when the guy who dies is like, go! And he turns into like a rolling asterisk.
That's one of my favorite moments.
Rolling asterisk. Yes.
It's
she, like,
totally
jumps
surprising.
into his arms. Scoop. Oh my gosh, I love it when he starts rolling through that water. That's definitely a top moment for me.
It's surprising because you don't really know how they move at that point yet.
We know
they
that they
just
kind of
like
do the big gorilla walk with their arms.
Yeah.
Where they can kind of like they walk like animatronic scissors. They walk like the wall, like two hammers in the wall. Yeah,
yeah.
I love the way these things move. They clearly thought a lot about it. Like there's so many. I feel like they're like funny, not just in the dialogue, but like when they're getting ready to go on Miller's planet, they're like, okay, is everybody ready? And they're like getting ready, and McConaughey's like, and Coop's like, go, 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 and every second counts. And you just see like in the background, Tars is like just like sliding in. He's horizontal. I don't know why he just sort of glided in. He's like, I'm ready to go. And I don't know why I thought it was so funny this time around. Oh my gosh, robots make me really emotional. I don't know what it is. Justin knows this. Like the movie Chappie, I cried the whole runtime of Chappie. I can't handle it when people are mean to robots.
Yeah, when they start beating him and like breaking bottles over his head and stuff.
Did you watch? Did you watch Short Circuit at a formidable part of your childhood?
No, she never did. So
I
know I'm gonna get her to watch Short Circuit 1 and 2. Don't worry.
Yeah. Ignore the Indian face. That's
the thing. I know that's what I always say. I'm like, isn't that the one with the brown face?
Yeah.
And Justin's like, okay, but like, there's other stuff that's good about this movie that you need to see.
Well,
but I'm also like, I'm like afraid
it
because
makes you pity
they really
robots.
hit me.
Yeah, like you'll feel it. The movie activates it. He gets like when he's like getting bullied. You're like, no, it's a robot. It's Johnny Five.
This sweet little robot.
No, yeah, you're gonna lose
innocent.
it with Short Circuit. I'm sorry. It's probably partly why I haven't showed it to you.
I know. It's like you just have to be prepared for me to be dehydrated afterwards, and puffy. It's like
my favorite part of Tars is when they're going up on the wave and then they start coming down, or I don't know, they're getting tossed around by the wave, and he grabs Hathaway and then he like you see the arms, and it's great. I'm like, this robot rules. I always liked those characters actually, like who are kind of robotic but got the job done. Like one of my favorite characters in Deep Space Nine was Odo. Because Odo always just felt like he was the security officer. He was a shapeshifter and kind of like a weirdo, but he always seemed to get the job done and like handle himself. Anyway, so I
always relate well to the characters who have no emotions and do their job well. Oh, that's lovely to hear from a partner.
It's spot on.
Yeah. No, it makes if I could paint by numbers on an MIT professor, it kind of sounds like.
Justin's learning about the spectrum of human emotion. Whenever I learn about how to handle like a toddler's big feelings, I'm telling Justin that, and he's like sort of counterintuitive, and I'm like, fun fact, it works for adults too if you validate their feelings. And Justin's like, ew. And I'm like, you know what doesn't work is immediately trying to solve the problem that they're emotional about,
or telling them that it's irrational to be emotional about that.
Really,
thing.
there's nothing. Think about it. You're stressed about this, but stress doesn't add any help to you. Like that's like the brain where you're like, hey, Spock, go back in the fucking chamber. Go back to bed, baby.
I learned my lesson on that one. I mean, we had a lot of fun fights over those things back in the day, and then we figured it out. And
I'm not always trying to solve the problem when I tell you something that's upsetting me.
But you know what's funny? One of my colleagues has a podcast where he talks to other philosophers, and he talked to, I don't know who it was, but they said the exact same thing, but they say it like I said it, like they were like 40, and they were like, oh, I learned that people really just want you to just nod and listen and tell them that you're sorry about how they're feeling. And I was like, fuck, yeah, I did learn that. I learned it earlier than 40, but it did.
But later than I should have, yeah.
Yeah, it was late in life. It was several partners later who had yelled at me for this shit.
You're like, okay, maybe it's not all women who okay, on the 6th time, I'm gonna look in the mirror here. And I think one of the thrilling things about the robots, to bring us back to going off of lack of emotion, bringing us back to robots, and
Yep.
I feel like something that the robots represent in a meta way, in a production way, is like that amount of thought that goes into shit. Like, I've seen 100 movies that feature hypersleep. This is the movie, I think, where I understood it the most, even though they don't explain it. We just see how people react to it. We see what happens when someone doesn't get into it. When man says, like, and I didn't even set a wake-up time this time. And when Romilly's like, well, I didn't want to be asleep forever in case you guys didn't come back. Like, all these things is like, and Nolan's thought that out. And that's like, it plays into the robots. It plays into how the endurance works with the lander. Like, a lot of that stuff, like, it makes you feel, again, for like, neurodivergency, you feel safe when you're like, yes, they've thought about a lot of stuff. And like, that makes you feel the cold science stuff that's going on is making me feel safe, because it's like, oh, we're in a rich movie. They've thought about TARS. They've thought about hypersleep. When this movie first came out, the Kip book, I remember being like the buzz around it was, it's a sci-fi movie where the science all works. It's like,
Right.
It's the way people were talking about it. Then you saw the movie and you were like, okay. I think we need to rephrase.
There is a love tesseract. So
yeah. No, but the love test. But that feeling of, I think what I call it, like, being in good hands. You know, like when you feel like the director like knows what they're doing. They've thought it through. You're going to have a question. Don't worry. They've thought of that question. They have the answer to that question. It's not going to have a bunch of like unmotivated plot details or something like that. It's going to be consistent and coherent. And the other thing about it, it's not just that, I guess. It's also like knowing that it's going to have a cool ass payoff at the end. You know? And like, that's the thing. Like, I had no idea where this film was going when I first saw it. Every beat, I was like, okay, what are they going to do now? Like, what the fuck are they, you know, like, by the point where he's about to drop in the black hole, I was like, I have literally no idea. Like, I don't know where this is headed, but I trusted Nolan. That's the thing. And another filmmaker who might not have earned that trust in me, I might have just signed off. I might have just been like, well, there's no narrative momentum. I don't really, right? You need, usually, like the Hitchcock thing is, you give them a goal, right? You give them like the ticking bomb that needs to be disarmed. And so now, okay, that's what has to be solved. That's why heist films are so satisfying. Like, you got to get this thing out of the bank, right? Okay, goal set. But this film, the goal was like not clear, because it wasn't like they're necessarily going to be able to get back home. It wasn't like they could solve the mission. So I was like, what is going to happen? You know, like, and then for when he goes into the black hole, I thought, okay, this is crazy. And I remember thinking like, but again, I'm strapped in, I'm locked in. I know Nolan's like going to handle it. And then when he hits that Tesseract, I was just like, this is fucking awesome. Because then at that point, I realized, that was the moment when I realized, like, okay, they're going to do the causal loop. He's going to talk to his daughter through gravity and all that shit. And you're just like, all right, yeah, he's pulling it all back together. All that shit he let, all those like little breadcrumbs he gave you, those are all going to add up now.
It's so satisfying.
It is so satisfying.
It's so satisfying.
Like, yeah, just, I don't know. Also, John, I don't know if you noticed that if you've like watched on YouTube or in the special features, like they built that Tesseract set. It's not CGI. Like, it's not a green screen. They just built it. And so you can watch the behind the scenes of like McConaughey floating in this thing where what they did was, the other crazy thing is some parts of it are extended with CGI, but not the parts you might have thought. So when there's like a bookcase that's being extended and it's all shimmery, that's not CGI. That is them using projectors to project stuff behind the bookcase. So it's like all practical, or almost all practical.
That's a fucking dream, man. And that's why it feels, that's why it doesn't feel absolutely corny, like he's in the fucking Phantom Zone or whatever at the end. Like, that's what makes it feel substantial and have some fucking meat or something to latch onto when you're in there, because that is
like texture and depth.
You gotta push it.
You're in a bananas situation in the movie. It's like, you've been along for the sci-fi ride, but now we're in a fourth dimension set up by fifth dimensional beings. We don't even know what is the fifth dimension. Is that explained?
I can try to explain it if you want.
Oh yeah, We said before we get to time dilation.
But time dilation actually, it's helpful to have the fifth dimension.
All right,
to
everybody
explain
get ready for some graphs.
All right,
Okay.
let's get into it. Let's get into diagram.
So think of like this. So we experience space in 3 dimensions, right? You got up, down, forward, back, left, right, right? So there's 3 dimensions. But physicists think there's really time is the 4th dimension. So you have to sort of think of it like a circle is to a sphere. Like a circle's 2 dimensions, sphere is 3 dimension. So what is a 4-dimensional sphere? It would be like a sphere snake, right? It would be like a thing extended in a 4th dimension. So the tesseract is a 4-dimensional cube. That's what a tesseract is. So okay, so now what's the 5th dimension? So
it's a cube that's a cube snake.
It's like a
moving
cube snake, and then the way it's often
Extending
represented is like you can see diagrams of these like 2-dimensional diagrams of these things, but it's kind of like a cube inside of a cube when you see the actual diagram of it. Anyway, okay, so now to think of 5 dimensions, we actually can't conceive of it because our brains just can't do it. So what they do is they say, okay, take one of the previous dimensions and like eliminate it. And now so you take like
height or whatever.
Well, actually eliminate 2 of the dimensions. That's the easiest way to do it, honestly. So take now like a flat plane and say like one dimension, you have 1 dimension of space and 1 dimension of time. Okay. So you have like a flat sort of surface, and yeah, we don't have 3 dimensions. You have space, but whatever. Okay, so now think of this space as itself being malleable, right? So you could twist and bend it. What are you twisting and bending it in? The 5th dimension. That's the 5th dimension, is what it's being twisted and bent in.
Because it's outside of the space, for lack of a better term. It's outside.
Exactly. There's another dimension that's outside of the 4 we're now representing with just 2. Okay, but now take a big. So imagine it's the way physicists think of this is like it's a rubber sheet. So think of it like a big rubber sheet. And in a rubber sheet, if you put a really heavy object on a rubber sheet, it will bend it, right? If like you were suspending a rubber sheet and then you put like a big ball in the middle, it would like bend that sheet in the middle and it would create a big indentation in it. And so now that's what gravity is supposed to be. So gravity is supposed to be like a large object bending space-time. So what it's doing is it's like curving the coordinates around it. Okay. Now, remember, it's not just bending space, it's bending time. So one of those dimensions that it's bending is time. Okay, so here's how I think of time dilation. And again, it took a lot to get to this point, but I think this is not really entirely accurate, but it's close as accurate as I can understand. So the speed of light is constant, right? This is one of Einstein's constants. So it sort of moves across this time dimension at the same rate. So it kind of traverses space-time at the same rate. But now think of the bend that's induced by gravity / the large object. So now what it's doing is if you take like, suppose you had on the sheet like 5 lines, like those are like going to be measured like the light speed, right? So it'd be like 5 clicks of the light speed. Think of those as like your heartbeats, the beats of your heart. So each time you go forward, that's 1 heartbeat, right? And then forward is another heartbeat and so on. Okay, so now you've got 5 lines lined up, and then you've got 5 lines lined up next to each other. So that's like 2 people's heart beating in parallel. Now, one of these guys goes through a bent space-time. So now his heartbeats are elongated, right? So they're elongated both in space and in time. So it's like he got longer. And so his heartbeats relative to the guy with the shorter heartbeats are each going to be longer. So he's going to have fewer of those heartbeats, covering the same distance as the guy with the not bent space-time. And that's time dilation.
So he's experiencing time at a different rate.
Yes.
Or time is acting at a different rate, whether he's whoever's feeling what. So those longer heartbeats, they both come out on the other end of this rubber sheet, and the person with longer heartbeats would be less aged.
Exactly. They would be younger.
Yeah, because they would have like, I'm 7 heartbeats younger than you. Or
exactly.
then we both started the exact same heartbeat. Okay. That's really I can't believe my nose is bleeding. I took no. Justin's eyes rolled up into his back into his head as he was explaining it. But
It took quite a bit of energy to figure that out. And I don't understand the math. Honestly, I don't understand the math. But conceptually, that was the best way I could understand it.
And it makes sense. Like the heavier the ball,
yeah,
the kind of longer the route you have to.
Exactly.
Ostensibly, you're taking the same path, but like it's feeling like you have that extra time that it would take to go around the weight, the ball, the gravity.
Yeah,
oh, man.
it's like your footsteps got bigger almost, or something like that. So you could cover more ground with fewer footsteps. That's another way of thinking of it. And anyway, for me, but the crazy thing about this is that because it's elongating the time part and the space part. That's the part that took me so long to get my head around. Is that it's the two dimensions of space and time together are like one. So you're like simultaneously elongating one and the other. That's why when you're undergoing it, you don't experience it any differently. It just feels normal.
Right.
So that's why when they're on the planet, they're not like, whoa. They're just like moving normally because the two dimensions warp at the same rate or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And then anyway, the black hole is the most extreme version of this. So like what they call a singularity is where space and time are bent to infinity, basically.
Now,
and so
that has nothing. There is like another singularity has like another meaning with like AI, right?
Yes, that's right.
And
yes.
those have nothing in common, right?
No, so it's this AI singularity is the moment when AI is able to reproduce intelligent AI on its own. I think that's the singularity. That's the Terminator 2.
Both singularities, totally terrifying.
Yeah. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, that's the kind of shit that, like, you know, if I was 12 and I was learning about this, I think I would have been really excited. Like, that's as a philosopher, like that's the kind of stuff that really is exciting and interesting about the physics. Like all I was learning in high school physics was like, you know, rolling balls down inclined planes and shit. And I was like, this is just like mediocre. Because I was doing more advanced math at the time when I was doing physics. So it was always like, well, we can't do the real math. So we're just going to do this baby math. And I was like, let's do the fucking real math. Like, come on. And they wouldn't teach it to us. And so I always just like felt like it was like baby math. That's how it always felt like. And then I never pursued it later for, you know, because I was an arrogant asshole or something. I don't know. I probably should have, but it's stuff like this that really, like, I don't know, it's like so cool.
Yeah.
And Laura doesn't give a shit about any of this.
I think you're wonderful. I just don't have this in my body. Because I remember like we like had a little you could take regular geometry or you could take what they call
non-Euclidean geometry.
Non-Euclidean geometry.
That's where you get rubber sheet geometry and all that
right.
stuff.
And this was like in 9th grade. I remember this. They like it was taught by a PhD. Actually, we called him Doctor whatever, I can't remember. But like anyway, he came in and he like did a demo for like the Algebra 2 kids to be like, do you guys want to do this? And he was like, well, think about it this way: when you have a triangle, you can't have two right angles, but you can if the triangle's on a sphere.
Yeah.
Boom. And I was just like, check, please. I will be taking regular geometry. This sounds scary.
I think I like Euclid.
Basically. Like,
I'm more of a Euclid gal. Bye.
He's like, can I blow your mind? And I was like, I will be a corn farmer. Thank you. Like, I just...
I'll be burning your crops so that I can steal your kids
but like,
away.
Joke's on me though, because I married somebody who's always like, can I show you this diagram that I drew?
I'm like, I need to rewatch Tenet so that I can diagram it for you.
Better be Euclidean, Justin. Yikes.
So wait, John. So to come back to Nolan, I want to ask you, like, as we're sort of wrapping up, I want to ask you, like, you know, where in the Nolan filmography Interstellar falls for you, and like what some of his other, you know, what are other Nolan movies you love and that kind of thing.
I mean, I love Inception, of course. Just hot dudes, beautiful women too, but hot dudes in suits with guns and shit. Like, that's just all for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Heat in your mind, like the movie Heat in your mind, and it's like that. Heat, dream Heat, like that's literally like that fucking rules. But I think Interstellar might be my fucking I curse so much. My favorite Nolan. I feel like I can't get enough of it. And I like Prestige. I love Dunkirk. I like all the Dark Knight movies, but I gotta say, like, it's like it goes in Interstellar, Inception. I'm excited for Oppenheimer. This is one of those instances where you're like, someone's like, they're making a movie about Oppenheimer. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan's making a movie about Oppenheimer. Christopher Nolan's making that's going to be really interesting. And I have not, like, it's so stupid of me, like, just fucking first thought dumb of like, well, Christopher Nolan. I am so happy to like lean over to my wife and be like, Oppenheimer invented the atomic bomb. You know, like, I'm like, that's good. And Nolan telling that story, that's enormous. I don't give a fuck about it for some reason. But Nolan, like, he brings that power. You know what I mean? Like, I want to watch him make every genre because I like the effort he puts in. Like, a lot of his movies feature funny moments, but I think Interstellar features some of the purest, like, straight jokes, like characters cracking jokes and them landing, and that feels so un-Nolan like as well. It is funny that most of the comedy is given to a robot. Like, that's a fun something to analyze about Nolan's idea of humor. Jonathan, I read your first draft. I feel like we need to bring humor up to 90%. And it's like, okay, Chris.
You know that Oppenheimer apparently was one of the people who did early work on black hole physics, like on some of the early physics, like black hole stuff. So there's a bunch of through lines because there's the shout out in Tenet. Like, I think like he's circling these themes of like these like scientists who are pushed to the extreme and
the Oppenheimer thing upon watching Interstellar, when it's like, you're making drones to do this, and like we could be and it's like the atomic bomb is like the theoretical, distillation of that idea of like, we have unlimited knowledge. And it's like, cool, I figured out a way to destroy populations of other people. And it's like, no, we could have a microwave that makes things cold really fast. Like, come on. Like, we put in so much money into like weapons and shit. It's like the NASA shit is like the dream. Like that, like, let's give us some hope. We have, the ocean is as undiscovered as space. I would like to see Nolan do an underwater movie, much like my man Cameron. I would like to see Nolan go underwater, or like, you know, even more directly like up against ecology shit. Like, I just like Nolan's perspective, is like fucking fully right-brained perspective on this stuff. Like, it just is so appealing to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, is there a genre you would want Nolan to do, Laura? Like, or anything he hasn't done yet?
I mean, I don't know if Nolan would work well in horror, but I'd be curious about it. I think this has got some, maybe it's just space has horror elements generally, but this is the movie that I feel the most in my body. So I'd be curious.
Do you know
about
what
that.
I want, John? Tell me what you think of this Nolan fantasy movie, or like Nolan like Middle Ages, right? Like, he's
Middle Ages makes more sense because that's like that grounding.
It's
that
gotta
he
be
would
more
like.
grounded,
Yeah. Out, dude. I'm a fantasy fucking nut. If you give me a Christopher Nolan movie and we got fucking some of his we got Leo Dio and fucking T. Hardy rocking swords and axes and shit. I'm gonna have to rent out the entire theater to myself. Speaking of rubber sheets, I'm gonna need rubber sheets for a different reason. I'm gonna be doing my own science experiments.
I just think, I feel like, because, well, I don't know. We talked a
period
little
piece
bit about
that much of a period piece from Nolan, rather than just like his sort of everything takes place in like contemporary and the 1920s at the same time. Like,
yes, it's the Victorian era, the 40s, or now, or future, I guess. But yeah, I would love to see him go back and, like, you know, because I think there's a lot of untapped stuff there. Like, I mean, I think we were talking about Genghis Khan earlier, and I think like a Genghis Khan movie would be, I think, nuts in a way, like just, you know, what those battles were like. And, you know, Nolan, he would be like, it has to be period perfect, right? Like the fighting would have to be period accurate. There wouldn't be any of these like battle scenes where the guys are just like swinging their swords haphazardly. That would all be much more serious and I don't know. Anyway, I think it would
precise.
be awesome. But
yeah, precise is the right word. I was going to throw out the adjective tight, but Laura, I think precise is the, like, his movies are tight, but it's precision. It's fucking watches, you know, and not the kind that you can program the second hand to wiggle, but like real watches. Like, imagine how long it takes to pass on a quantum theory via Morse code.
He must have been there moving those books for so long. I know. I thought about that too. And I like that she's just like smiling to herself, like dictating it. She's like, la, 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 la. 5 years later. It's a lot of data. Although I don't really understand what quantum data is.
Nobody
but it's
knows.
okay. Don't explain it, Justin.
Nobody, I don't know. Nobody
Okay.
knows. Nobody knows.
Is your favorite movie Inception?
Yes, my favorite is Inception, but the thing that I was surprised by was that Interstellar has like jumped into the top 3 for me, and I just think like every time I watch it, it goes up higher and higher, and I think it's really good. I think he,
yeah, my top 3 are Inception, and Interstellar, and Tenet, and I think the rewatchability of those is part of what makes them so appealing. They're always going to be fresh in my mind because every couple of years you watch it and you're like, just pick up on that much more shit, you know? Like, I never really put that fucking anomaly that brings all the tractors to their house, like in the beginning of the movie, like, and it's like, oh my God, he's already doing, like, it's already happening. Well, like the ghost is already there.
Also the anomaly that takes him down in the plane, the very first. The very beginning of the film, he says, so I wondered if also that was him, or like if he was flying over his farm or something and he hit it, you know, or whatever. Anyway, I don't know, but like,
or he knew he had to take himself out of that. Like, the fifth dimensional beings are ostensibly maybe him too, and they knew he couldn't go on that mission fully. Like he couldn't become a pilot because he would have been one of those 12, right? He would have been in man's crew probably. Yeah. He probably would be dead on some fucking barren planet somewhere or in the long nap. But somehow someone knew to hit him with that anomaly there. Like, it can't be a coincidence. We're learning that it's not. Like, the movie wouldn't have a coincidence. So it has to be him doing that, or the beings that made the Tesseract, who also are probably Coop as well. Oh, and the movie ends with the coda of the movie is, we're going back out, like, to be continued or not, you know, like the end or not. It's so old school, awesome shit of like, well, great to meet you, my 80-year-old daughter. You're saying everyone in this room is a grandchild or great grandchild of mine. No time to interact with them. I don't. I gotta
Smell
get
you later.
Peace out. I gotta go get Bran, and that's just and like Murph knows it. He knows it. It's just so rich. It's so, like, I love it. It makes me so happy where he's just like, no, you're right. It's back to the grind, exploring. It's time to get back out there. Nothing I know about Earth is real anymore. Like, nothing I was here for. My house is weird. Oh, I forgot about that. The house is
weird ass house.
Weird ass house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's also like he goes back. It's like a museum, and he just goes and lives there. And he's like repairing tars or whatever, and he's living in his old museum house now. That'd be very strange, but anyway.
Like, hey, Cooper, the plumbing is fake. Oh no, we got to get a cleanup crew here. I've been fucking dropping heat in the downstairs bath. All this non-corn food is ripping me to shreds.
It's true. They don't talk about the food. They probably got way better food now that they're flying through space, or I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they're just eating that like really great like space ice cream that you got when you go to a gift shop when you were a kid.
Yeah.
That's not ice cream. Ice cream of the future.
Oh God. Oh man, love Dippin' Dots. Jon, thank you very much for being here. And for folks out there, the podcast is High and Mighty, also Action Boys. The show is
101 Places to Party Before You Die. I'll jump in there. I've said it enough. It's on HBO Max now, all 8 episodes. I co-hosted with actor, comedian Adam Pally, and it's the best job I've ever had. I don't know if it'll ever happen again, but I'm zen about it now. The victory was the fact that I got paid to drink with a good friend around America. Like, that rules. And I would love to do it again, but just watch, enjoy. It's more than you think it is. Both of us had parents die young, so the before you die element is like earnest. We like want to chase life because we don't know how long we have. Unless, of course, love can go across time, but we don't really get into that on HBO Max. So we don't have time in our 24-minute episodes. But yes, please check it out. And if you're into movies, the Action Boys is a Patreon, but we have some free episodes. It's sort of the exact opposite of Cows in the Field in that we have very meathead mouth breather discussions about classic action cinema, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But it's obviously we're aiming for comedy more. But fuck, man, this has been a real pleasure for me to be on Cows in the Field. I could not stop thinking about. I made my wife listen to your podcast. I'm making all four of us do an episode of High and Mighty together. This was so thrilling. This was I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to rewatching Interstellar and looking forward to talking to people smarter than me about Interstellar. So it's thrilling that I got to do that.
I'm going to just leave that to Justin.
Laura, I think it's safe to say you may too be smarter than me. Maybe not in the fucking categories of your husband Tars over there. But I guarantee
also had to adjust his honesty setting a few times in this relationship.
Jon, thank you for those kind words. If I can just, spin it back. We watched all of 100 Places to Party Before You Die. It rules. The show is hilarious. And the first episode in Denver, where I grew up in Denver, and I was recommending it to all my Denver friends. And there are so many good jokes. I won't repeat any of them here because some of them are very not safe for work, but go watch it. Very good. It's very funny.
I will say
we went through it fast.
The closing joke that I make in the Denver episode to me was like the canary in the coal mine. I was like, I can't believe the network let us put that on TV. Yeah. and that to me is finally someone just putting my raw sense of humor on television. It's great. And it just felt so good. It's the first job I've ever had in Hollywood that didn't activate my imposter syndrome. So it felt like beautiful. I felt like I was doing something like Coop. Just because I was enjoying it doesn't mean it was bad. I finally happened to also be really good at that job. I didn't realize that. And so I was I was finally a dude being very good at something.
Yes!
Hyper capability.
Yes! What more can you want in life? That's amazing. Well, I hope there is a second season because you do have to get to 100. You have to get to 100. I think it has to happen. And even if if they don't renew you should just do it as a web series or something. It should happen, I think.
Oh, I think we're going to, we'll see it under a different name somewhere else if we can. Eventually it'll be Gas Station TV presents 6 more places to die or whatever,
Exactly.
We'll just keep lowering the stakes until we're eventually, we're only playing on hospitals and shit.
It is great, and this Action Boys and then High and Mighty, which is also an incredible show. And I think one of the things I was remarking this to Laura, and I will just tell you because why not? We're here, and I can't remember which one it was. I listened to a bunch of them recently, and they've kind of blended together. But there was you guys were just riffing on how much you loved food and adventure and all these things, and it was just I was like, man, Jon really loves life in a way that I wish I could love life this much. And I was just like, this is incredible. It was so infectious and so inspiring for someone like me who just literally, I don't know if you've listened to Minority Report, where I talk about how I want to be in a milk bath and live in a virtual reality. That's kind of my go-to, but it's nice to see someone who really, I don't know, has the zest for life and is sort of unapologetically pursuing that. I think that's awesome and it's inspiring and people should listen because it's infectious and it will make you happy.
Thanks,
so
man.
Check it out.
I appreciate that's really kind of you to say. Yeah. I have Coop's energy towards exploration, but my exploration is trying food that I've never had before. A little doesn't really help society in any way, but I'm out there. I refuse to say no to something someone offers me, which has gotten me in some, problematic situations, but I cannot resist. If someone makes me something or offers me something, I just always say yes. And that's just the way I have to live my life. And I made that choice and it's led to a lot of adventures and I'm glad you picked up on that. I'm glad. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope you say yes to something that seems scary or dumb in your near future. Yeah.
Exactly. You are my inspiration for that job, because really, like, I think it's not just that you say yes, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you like are excited about it, right? You're yeah. So for me, I feel an obligation to say yes, but in my mind, I'm thinking, no, don't do it. No. And then you're like, oh, and then I'm like feeling anxious. Like, I'm like, oh no, am I going to die from this? You know?
If I had to psychoanalyze myself a little bit, it would be for sure one of the reasons I like trying new things and doing things for the first time and I don't have fear for it is because there's not aptitude is not expected of me. So there's something about that. I'm not good at something like I don't have like the stick-to-itiveness to become an elite scientist but for me, I could try anything because it's like, well, if I suck, I could say to myself, well, this is the first time you've ever played water polo, dude. You're allowed to suck. But if I worked really hard at it for 5 years and still thought I sucked, it would like undo me. So I am cheating a little bit. I am keeping myself in my, if everything is new, I never have to like master anything. Jack of all trades, like I could be like, I do a lot. I'm a polymath. And what that means is I'm lazy in the long run. But I can call myself a polymath and dance away on that. And I think I should Google that to make sure I'm right. But
no, you're right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's a lesson that I think many more of us can learn. And probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast could probably learn, because a lot of the people in my circles we are like the kind of people who do one thing. Like I worked on this book for literally 15 years of my life. And I mean, in a way, like it wasn't entirely that, but like I was in a way
you thought about If for a really long time.
It's a culmination of 15 years of life, of work.
Of
yeah.
If.
Yeah. 100%. And you know how many people are going to read this book? Like probably 30. Like it's like so sad. I mean, that's how like
31. I'm ordering The Science of Interstellar and The Power of If. Don't you worry.
Yes, the meaning of If. The meaning of If. Yes, but
I'm like, I read The Power of If, a completely different book. It changes my life, and I like keep telling everyone, Justin Ku's book changed my life, and I'm reading a completely something like some self-help novel by
yeah. The Power of If. Actually, I should have been The Power of If.
The Power of If.
Oh, John, I wish I had you as a consultant. That would have been good.
No, we would have reached like 50 people instead.
Yeah, and then marketed it as self-help. I think that's the other problem, is it's in the philosophy genre, which immediately loses.
Well, listen,
readership.
Once we get our philosophy / parenting self-help series going, then we're really going to be successful.
That's where the money is.
Yeah, that Venn diagram is going to be 7 people, and you guys are 2 of them. But.
That's true, actually. How many philosopher parents are there? Fewer and fewer every year. Okay, we are at.
This is the 5th ending, so we should. Yeah.
Yes, I know. Now I better end this fucking podcast. We are at CowsPod on Twitter. You can find us on the web at cowspod.wordpress.com. You can buy a shirt with 2 cows on it at cowspod.threadless.com. And in 2 weeks, we'll be talking, as aforementioned, we'll be talking with Roxana Haddadi about the movie Inside Man, and very exciting episode. We've actually already recorded it. We talked about long-termism. It's great. Check it out in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks after that, because it just came up, fantasy, I'll just mention, we're going to be talking to John DeVore about Willow. So look forward to that.
Hell yeah.
All right. Bye, folks.